live from STS Studios in St. Louis, Missouri, and I got my co-host, Gene Jackson. Gene, where are you hailing from tonight?
We are right here, as always, in Coleman, Alabama. Right here
Alabama.
The northernmost part of Alabama.
Southern. Did you say the southernmost part?
No, we're in the northernmost part of Alabama.
The northernmost part.
Yeah.
My bad. Now, down in Alabama, do you guys know what wash is? Do you wash your clothes in Alabama?
Well, there's not many people that wash their clothes in some of these places in Alabama. But that's another story.
Do you cut your lights on and off? Do you cut them off?
Yeah, some people do. See, my dad's from Missouri, so I've heard wash all my life, even if a lot of the other people around here haven't. So.
A lot of people in the United States, we're teaching you new words. Wash, and you cut your lights on, and you can cut them off, or you can cut them on. Either one. What about, do you have dinner, lunch, and supper, or what do you have?
I was hoping you were going to mention that, because all my life, my dad would have breakfast, dinner, and supper. There's no lunch. Lunch is dinner to him, and then dinner is supper. So that's how I was raised.
I used to have a boss that always said, counter. You got something over there in the counter. So there we go. Everybody knows all these Southern Wang Tang now words that only people here in the South know. There's one more. I've got to say something. Do you drink? See, my mama says this. In the area that I was born and raised in, they drink soda.
Dad said that too. So this is. I don't know that this is necessarily a Southern thing, but back in the day, like in the late 70s, like there was 2 or 3 different convenience stores, and they were called the Humpty Dumpty. And so every convenience store since up till now, he'd be like, run down to the Humpty Dumpty and grab me a soda. You know? Like, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
So, before we came on, guys, we were wondering where we get 30 minutes out of this show. What we decided to do, and I think we will now. So we had promised an ROH show a couple shows back. Instead, we did ECW last month. This month, we're going to come back and we're going to do ROH, and we're going to talk about was it really that good. And I picked out something because I remember you being a huge Kevin Steen fan. I did remember that, and then me not being, in the sense that I was in the dark when it come to Kevin and ROH. And so what we're going to answer was it really that good in the sense, was Kevin Steen's run there in ROH was as good as everyone thinks it was or remembers it as? It's not as, we're not going that far back this time. But it also gives us, and we won't go over the whole time he was there. I picked 3 matches from 3 different time periods just for us to sit down and talk about it. So tell me, I knew you was a huge Steen fan, right?
Yes, most definitely.
And
and that's really what got me to watching ROH on a regular basis. I would see the DVDs periodically and things like that. But when I first moved over here around Coleman, the first time, I won't go into all the stories of explaining that, but the first time I got here, there was a local station that had ROH on every Saturday night. And it was right as, one of the matches we're going to talk about today is when Kevin Steen lost the, loser leaves ROH match, or however the verbiage of it was. And he went away for several months. And it was right as he was coming back from that. And he had just an incredible heel run. And it was so much different than what you were used to from ROH at the time, or at any point in ROH's history. And of course, Cornette had been very vocal about his dislike, behind the scenes of Kevin Steen and Generico and some of those guys. And so you had, Steen trying to come back in, and Cornette's against it, and he's cutting promos on him. And I don't know, it kind of had a modern day Austin McMahon type feel, but not a ripoff, but just that, similarity.
Right. And he talked about that on that RF video shoot where he said that he loved doing that stuff with Cornette. Like, it was just so fun. It was none of it was really scripted, but he said that Cornette sometimes gave him lines that he could throw at Cornette. So that had to be fun for him to do stuff like that. What we picked, I picked 3 matches, and this first match was just, we'll talk about the finish in a minute, but it's like everything else I pick. It was just random, and it had the ending has something huge at the very end, and you may remember some of this stuff more than I do. I also wanted to pick a match with him and Sami Zayn, which I have a hard time calling him Generico. For some reason, I want to call him Jericho. And then I still, one of the things that I hate, and I know you was a Steen fan before he was Kevin Owens, but I hate when the fans, like, when he changes to Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and then the fans still called him Steen, It's like, until today, they still some of them call him that, and it drives me crazy. It's like, that's not his name anymore. But I was not a fan of his at ROH and didn't really think he was, I don't know, I guess I was kind of like on the Cornette side where I looked at him and said, oh, he don't even look like a wrestler. But I think that's the part that after you watch, especially if you watch these 3 matches, it's exactly what makes him a star, is that he is totally different look than everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing in ROH. So many guys looked and worked the same. It really made him stand out. But even though he was a fat guy in a t-shirt, as Cornette will say to this very day, the guy could work. I mean, he had tremendous matches with Davey Richards and the stuff with him and Generico. And I tell you, a match that I really wish would have been available to us that we could have watched in this for today's episode is the match he had with Steve Corino, their match, I think it was one of the final battles or something like that, but it was a fight without honor, and they tables and chairs and all kinds of shit. But and it was one of the matches that really stood out. It's like some of the bumps he took in that match, like for a guy his size, like it's going to be a miracle he's not in a wheelchair by the time he gets 40, because he takes some crazy bumps for a guy as big as he is. But he's just, I don't know, like, he's so good on the mic. Like, he's such just a genuine, like, smart ass. And you can tell it's really, it's really his personality. It's not like some character he's trying to play or whatever. And all the things that Cornette knocked him for, to me, like you just said, you summed it up, is what made him stand out and really catch on, because he was so different from anybody else on the ROH roster or anybody they had pushed up to that point. It made it fun. It made it more interesting, and especially when you had him out there needling Cornette, and basically sticking it in his face that, no, I'm not the stereotypical ROH wrestler,
Right. Well, the first match we looked at was the Young Bucks against Steen and Generico, who I want to call Jericho, but Generico. They're putting over that Steen is hurt. They do this really funny spot with one of the Young Bucks spits gum at Kevin, and Kevin picks it up and puts it in his mouth.
Now I'll say this for Steen, and I'll say this. I call him either Steen or Owens based on the context of the time frame of when we're talking about it. If we're talking about him in ROH, I will refer to him as Kevin Steen. But if we were having a show about his WWE run, I refer to him as Kevin Owens. I really wish he would have came in, though, at the time period where people were keeping their names. Like, I wish he'd have been Kevin Steen.
Right.
And I liked his theme music in ROH better than the WWE one. But I don't want to jump ahead of the next match, but yeah, you think watching that, like, wow, putting somebody else's gum in your mouth, that's pretty gross, but that paled in comparison to what happens in the...
when we talk about the final match we had on this list, this unbelievable. This guy, all 4 guys went out, doing what they do best, kind of thing. It was fun to watch the Young Bucks. This was 2009. They were still really some of the spots they were doing there they don't even do now. So it was kind of weird to watch the match. It was different. They were doing some weird stuff with the tag too. Like at first it was like we had two hot tags at one time at one point in the match, but it was from two different teams.
Yeah,
it was like both of them were babyface teams, but they were getting heat. I mean, it was crazy. Then Generico was getting man, he was over too, just huge over with the ROH fans. They were getting heat on him. Steen just did old school stuff by walking on the side of the ring to get the crowd going again. I mean, it was a really, really good, solid match, and all four of those guys are just they're so good. And the weird thing is that, Sami Zayn never wore the mask in the WWE. So that's Sami Zayn. Like you said, the name is different. But, and I know this sounds really weird, but his expressions with that mask, the way he moved his head and the way he did he was just so good at it. It's like you didn't see the mask kind of thing.
Yeah. He's such a talented guy. I really hate that he hasn't called. I mean, he's done some big things in WWE, but I really think they haven't really scratched the surface of what he's capable of doing at WWE. Although I think the stuff, and this is going completely off track, but since we kind of mentioned it, the stuff with him as a heel teaming with Owens on SmackDown before the injuries came about was some of the favorite stuff I've seen from Sami Zayn in WWE, because again, that's his real personality. Like from what I've gathered in shoot interviews and stuff, they say he's just an obnoxious guy, and that's why him and Owens are best friends, because they're just they're kind of shitheads, like they portray. And I think it's fun whenever you get to see a glimpse of people's real personality like that. I think it's fun, and I think that's when they get over the most too. When it's really them, but. Man, they had some crazy, crazy matches, as a tag team and then against each other. And like you said, it's interesting to go back in time and see them against the Young Bucks, considering where the Young Bucks are now and where, Owens and Zayn are now and all that. And, seeing, like say this was several years ago. So I don't know that anybody watching that match in that moment could have predicted that, one team's going to be in the WWE and the other team's going to be starting their own promotion and making all the waves that those guys are. And if you had to guess which was which, I think most people would have figured Young Bucks would be the ones in WWE, and that, Steen and Generico would be the ones off having to start their own thing.
Yeah, because they look nothing like. And at this point, Steen and Generico look totally different than anything in the business. And then the Young Bucks were just, man, I mean, at this point, I was not on the Young Bucks bandwagon yet. I was more of their spot monkeys. I don't really like them, but everything was real smooth in this match. What I really liked is that they talked about the spot, about Steen with his knee was hurt. They went into a sharpshooter spot where it was kind of like a rest hold, and it was all set up where you thought that was going to be the finish, that they were going to get and I can't remember which one of the Bucks was going to submit, but his knee gave out on him. Just excellent stuff. They ended up losing. Now, here's what I hate about ROH, and they've done this before. A lot of the old DVDs and stuff is that they do a mic spiel, but the mic is not. It's not mic'd to the actual video. Right.
You're just hearing it over the house mic through the DVD, and it sounds like hell. You normally don't know what they're saying or anything. Yeah, that's terrible.
If you was following it during this time, was this just one of those turns that just came out of nowhere, or do you know?
It had kind of built to some degree. I wasn't following it real closely at the time, but from what I've gone back and gathered, there had been seeds planted for a little while that it was coming.
Well, he did some stuff, gave him a big hug, like he was retiring or something. I really couldn't catch a lot. Then he told him he hated him and then turned on him. So and then we'll go to here before we get through. We got a match from 2014. We'll go forward. Then we're going to go back to Zayn and Steen there, and talk about a final battle match. But first, let's get a quick commercial. We'll be right back. All right, back for a commercial with my Mean Gene. See, I can call you Mean Gene Jackson now. There's been time. So the second match that we actually watched, before we get into that, that's what I wanted to do is ask you, because I know you were going to live matches during this time too, right? With Steen as he turned on Jericho and he was a big time heel.
By the time I got to see him live, the first time I saw him live was at a house show in Birmingham, and he had it was one of those, the thing that always happened, especially in places like Memphis. He got so hot as a heel, he eventually turned babyface because he couldn't do enough to make the crowd hate him. Like, I know, like one time in particular, after one of his title defenses against Davey Richards, they were in New York, and he's just literally like just cussing the crowd, and they're cheering, he called him. He's like, "You stupid bastards! You can't even, you don't even know your part." And they're like, "We're stupid bastards. We're stupid bastards." So they finally gave in, and he was a babyface. And so by the time I got to see him work live, most of that he was a babyface. But he was way over the hill. So kind of put this in context, like this match that we're about to discuss right now with Nakamura, this is pretty much after he had turned babyface. He had just dropped the belt to Adam Cole, they were a lot, pushing towards being the top heel, and he was babyface, and unbeknownst to a lot of people, he was already on the path of heading towards WWE. And then, so like I say, we're going to take a giant leap back in time with the next match, but he was kind of in a weird space here. He was. The fans had kind of turned him babyface, and so he's still trying to be the guy that they started cheering for to start with, and but he's trying to be a prick, but then he's trying to be the good guy at the same time. Which the only person who's ever perfected that was Steve Austin, because he just never changed how he acted. Everybody else has to kind of walk a fine line of. Well, I'm a babyface, but if I act like a babyface, you're gonna not like me because that's why you liked me. So. It was kind of weird, but I thought this was a pretty fun match. A couple of the spots kind of showed his personality and the kind of things that got him over. Like, when he's doing the good vibrations deal in the corner and Steen just comes up from it and asks him if he's having a stroke or whatever it was he said, and shit like that. But it's interesting to go back and look at this match, considering where they are now. The success that Nakamura had to where now he's, pretty much a nobody on SmackDown.
That's true, and he was so hot at this time, and his rise of being so hot was starting around this time, and I really still wasn't a big Nakamura fan or a Steen fan at the time yet. But I remember seeing this match. Steen did a drop kick, which I thought was awesome. The crowd was so into him and Nakamura. But yeah, there was all kinds of stuff where you could see the charisma from both of the guys, see that they were, big stars. I remember reading in the Observer, and I was going to go back but didn't, because that's another show. We're not observing the Observer.
No.
But Nakamura, this was the first New Japan ROH time that they mixed both of it's called War of the Worlds. And they talked about Nakamura being really quiet, not saying anything to anyone backstage, and people thought he was an asshole.
Yeah.
But it was mainly because he couldn't speak very much English, so he just stayed to himself. I thought the spot where at one point Steen's going to do the cannonball. Well, he does do the cannonball off the ring apron, and Nakamura just moves out of the way. And he just hits that floor so hard.
Yeah, he's like I say, man, for a guy his size and everything, he's taken some pretty incredible bumps in his career that I'm sure he's going to pay for at some point. But
yeah, it was just nutty, and this is just a solid match. And like I say, I picked these matches out of random. We'll put these up on the Twitter page there so that people can look at what we were watching. Basic match, but it was really fun to kind of like go back in time 5 years and watch it. I love the finish, by the way. So Nakamura does his finisher on him, and he kicks out of one. I mean, just pops right up, and then he pops right up, and Nakamura hits him again, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting finish, and I remember back at this time, there was a lot of debate amongst the smart fans, thinking that Kevin Steen wasn't gonna put over Nakamura, but surely Nakamura was going to come over here and put over Kevin Steen, especially after he just dropped the title. So I think a lot of people were kind of shocked at that finish, that there wasn't something screwy going on.
Right. I thought it was a really solid match and fun to see both of those guys. Now, let's go to the match of the three matches we watched. It was 2010 Final Battle. Apparently, these guys have been feuding for close to a year. Generico and Steen there. And it led to a fight without honor match.
Cornette and Steen have both said separately that Steen sent Cornette an email that outlined this feud from the turn on Generico at the end of that tag match to the finish of this match. He laid out a year's worth of that angle and all the stuff that happened in between, where the other people came along as tag partners and all this. And Cornette tweaked it a little bit here and there, but for the most part, they let him carry out the whole angle, and this was the big payoff to it. This match at Final Battle, and there's some crazy stuff goes on in this match. And like I say, I get Cornette's gripe about psychology and a lot of that stuff, because they do a lot of things that's just over the top. But man, the crowd was with them. Generico was super over, and Steen had good heat, and the crowd was up for most of this match.
I thought they was in it, yeah, like you said, I was too. I was just, Steen was bleeding like crazy. He hit a gusher. In one spot, He was walking around the ring, and you could see it squirting out. Just crazy. He took off, he ripped off the barriers from the metal part of the barriers, and then did a frog splash on Generico. Generico's mask was up against Steen's Ring of Honor career, and you mentioned this at the very front. Was this when he left for X amount of months? Because after this, people probably know to finish this match. I'm not messing up anything, but he left and then came back because they did an old Memphis angle with this, didn't they? Where Zayn's the one that had him come back or something like that.
Something like that. He because Cornette had told him, okay, well, you'll drop the fall and we'll send you home for a few months. And Cornette has always contended his intention was for Steen to go take a few months off and get in shape and lose some weight, and then come back and get a really good push, because he recognized that he had some charisma and he could get some heat. But Cornette was pretty insistent. He wanted him to get in shape, get out of the t-shirt, go back to the singlet, and come back, and he'd put the title on him. And as Cornette tells it in a couple of different interviews, goddamn, he come back 6 months later, he's fatter than he fucking was when he left, and so they ended up, Carino was a big advocate of his during his time. He even breaks up one of the pinfalls during this match, because apparently during the year-long deal, Steen had been kind of Carino's what do you call it? Like, Carino had been his teacher, or whatever you want to call it.
Yes,
and so, if you will. And so, eventually, Steen's popping up at shows and demanding to come back, and a feud with him and Carino is how he was finally allowed to come back. Like, he showed up out of the crowd and attacked Carino, and then Carino demanded that Steen be reinstated, and then they had that match that I referred to earlier. And then later down farther than that, Carino, they proved to work together on the whole thing, and there was inside, it was a setup all along, blah blah blah. But which is kind of out there considering the violence in their match. But anyway, back to this one. At one point, Steen tears the mask of Generico, busts Generico's head open, and he bled pretty good. He didn't have a gusher where it was spewing out, but he had a lot of blood.
I may be wrong here, but I think the referee bladed him.
I wouldn't be surprised because I didn't catch where it really happened exactly.
I think he did. He hit him with the chair. He flipped over. The referee went to his head, and then when he came back, he was bleeding. So it kind of looked like the referee had done it. Man, he was bleeding bad. Oh, he was bleeding bad. So Steen then had taken off the mask of Generico, and he had it on his. He had taken the mask off during the angle. Okay.
Prior match.
And then Generico had changed the mask or something. There was something weird going on there, but he put it on his hand, and Generico is bleeding like crazy, and he's like a puppet. I mean, I was just cracking up, but the blood was so thick. I mean, and here we go back to what he did. He actually took his hand. And had blood all over his hand.
He rubbed it across Generico's face.
Yeah.
So he has got his hand is solid red with Generico's blood, and just slowly licks across his hand. I was dry heaving the first time I saw it, and again last night when I watched it again. That's probably one of the most disgusting things I have ever witnessed in wrestling. Oh, that bothers me so much. That is so terrible. On the level with some of this Joey Ryan shit we've seen recently that's bothersome with blow pops being stuck up people's ass and then put in their mouth and all that sort of thing.
Hey, what's wrong with that? Look, so the thing about it's when he slaps Generico on the back with his hand, and you really did see how much blood was there. I mean, it was all over the place. There was all kinds of stuff. They did a dive. Generico did that dive where he did the dive through a table and a ladder that was set up, and did that DDT move that he does. They ended up sending. Who went through that? I can't remember. Oh yeah, it was like a flare flip from the ring post through a table, hitting a ladder.
Yeah.
And it was a Steen taking that, just crazy. What else? There was all kinds.
The thing that killed, Generico's finish was a brain buster into the top turnbuckle, which always just drove me crazy. Like, good God, that is 10 kinds of dangerous.
Right.
And this was a fine example because he gives it to Steen. Steen bounces off and falls to the floor. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, he could have been killed off of just that one move alone. He has to go out and get him, pitch him back in the ring to go for the pin. And I think that's the fall that Carino broke up, if I'm not mistaken.
He jumped in there during one part of it, and they ended up Generico had used the package power driver, and then Carino.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Broke up. Yeah.
That's it.
And then Colt came out. There was all kinds of shit. There was that was a false finish, and then we had another ref bump with a package pile driver, another near fall. There's all kinds of stuff going on. A package pile driver on the chair that Generico did to Steen that I thought killed Steen also. Then that brain buster on the turnbuckle that you're talking about, so fucking crazy. And then it was a near fall, and Steen reaches in and gives him back the mask. And he's begging him not to hit him with a chair, so you don't know what's going to happen at the end.
And Jesus, did he tag him with that chair? Good grief.
Woo. So he does hit him with a chair, pins him, and so Steen is out of ROH, and Generico keeps his mask, and he never is unmasked until he goes to... apparently that was one of those other ideas of Jim Cornette, that they wanted him to take that mask off, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, they had fought hard over that. I know Steen has said that in a couple different interviews because Generico's never done one to my knowledge. Because Generico and Steen won't even acknowledge that he's Sami Zayn. You know, they contend to this day that he's running an orphanage in Africa or some shit. But you know, that Steen had said that Cornette had gotten really pissed because he kept pushing for the mask to come off, and even you know, thought that maybe letting them set this angle up and it coming down to Steen leaves or the mask comes off might be the ticket to finally get him to agree to do it, because he figured when push come to shove, Steen wasn't going to be willing to go home for 3 or 4 months, but that's what ended up happening. But yeah, it served him well. It was a good gimmick for him, and God knows he was over as hell. Everybody chanting, that ole ole, which they still do on occasion. And speaking of Nakamura a moment ago, while I thought the Steen match with Nakamura at ROH was pretty fun, the Sami Zayn Nakamura match at the Takeover, where Nakamura made his debut, was just probably the best match Nakamura has had in WWE to date. Yeah. It really set the bar high for what he was going to be capable of, which I don't think has lived up to since. But man, what a match! If you're listening to this and you've never seen it, go out of your way to see that match. It's a hell of a match.
And this match that we just talked about, if you're into old school blood, guts, the whole 9 yards, go watch this match. It's fucking crazy. It's awesome. They talk about 5 stars, 6 stars, whatever. Hell, you can't get any better than this if you're talking about a brawl. So it reminded me of those old Moondogs Fab matches where there was so much blood everywhere, and everyone was bleeding, and it was just really good. So I gotta ask you, was it really that good?
I say yes.
I say yes too. Very good shit. Steen was, and it makes me want to go back and watch the stuff that when he was in ROH, because I missed a lot of that stuff.
Really, really quickly. My brother, who has probably never seen the ROH, is only a WWE, only recently become a WWE fan again in the last 2 years. Had told me what a Kevin Owens fan he was, and I sent him that picture of me and Rosie with Kevin Steen at a ROH show. He's like, "Oh my God, you got to meet Kevin Owens?" I'm like, "Well, sorta." And so for Christmas, I got him the ROH Kevin Steen Hell Rising DVD, which pretty much covers that whole run of his for the most part, or at least the high spots of it, And I said, watch this. If you like him in WWE, watch this from him in ROH. And yeah, he called me about 2 weeks later. He's like, holy shit. He's like, dude, if he could do all that stuff that he did there in WWE, it would be freaking crazy. I'm like, yeah. No
so
shit.
You did meet him. I meant to ask you about that coming out of break. So was he a nice guy?
Oh, super nice guy. He at that Birmingham house show, everybody was there doing meet and greets, and they were lined up behind the tables. And so everybody was doing the, lean across the table and take a picture thing. And Steen's like, fuck that. And he would come out from behind the table every single time and take a picture. If you go back and look at that picture on my page, like he's like standing with his arm around both of us. And just super nice. Hey, where are you guys from? And, and blah, 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 and made conversation. And, yeah, just super cool guy.
Awesome. Good to hear. All right, guys, remember, same bat time, same bat channel. On the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Be there. And you guys know I love my mama. Thank you, Gene.
Thank you.